Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to a new playthrough on the channel. After a busy day yesterday and a daytime interceptor over the skies of World War II Germany, and then a visit to the Terra Mystica universe in Age of Innovation, we're heading back to an ever-familiar, ever-ominous setting, back to the Cthulhu Mythos, as we play Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu from Z-Man Games. In this game, we're trying to stop the Ancient Ones from waking up and destroying the world. We can lose the game in one of several ways. We lose if Cthulhu wakes up, hence the name of the game, Reign of Cthulhu. We lose if we need to place a cultist or a shug-off, but we can't. We lose if both of our investigators go insane. And what's the last way we lose? We need to draw a player card, but we can't. I knew there was one more way we could lose the game, but I couldn't remember that way off the top of my head. So that's everything set up for that. As far as the win-loss conditions are concerned, let's go meet the heroes who are going to be taking on today's game. In a change from our normal tandem, our first character today is the reporter. She's got 4 actions as indicated by that, the 4 sanity tokens over here. And for her special ability, when taking a bus, discard any clue card to move to any location in any town. And as an action, we can move from a bus station to any other bus station, which we happen to start off at the train station in Arkham. There's our reporter Minnie. We'll move her up to the train station. Then for her starting hand, her first card is a Dunwich clue card. Next up, Arkham. Third, another Arkham, and Innsmouth. So we've got some options there as far as what we want to do, but let's move over to her partner today. Her partner today is the Doctor. We'll take a quick look at him. All he does is you may do up to 5 actions per turn. There's the Dr. Mini. We'll move him up to the train station. As far as his starting hand, first up he's got another Arkham, then Song of Kadath. No sanity roll required to play this card. Choose one. All players regain 1 sanity token, or 1 player regains full. We'll use that as a turn marker, the lens cap. Next up, Innsmouth, and finally, Dunwich. No Kingsport yet, which is a little bit concerning, but I don't think there's anything we can do about that right now. Those should still be in the deck. But we need to move back up to we need to move up top to the main board so we can spawn our initial cultists. It's actually our initial enemies that we need to spawn, so the first 2 cards off the top of the summoning deck are going to get 3 cultists. The farmstead gets 3 cultists, as does the park, which is our gate location in Arkham. The next 2 cards get 2 cultists. The market gets 2 cultists. The Kingsport bus location, as does the graveyard, which is the Kingsport gate location. These next 2 get 1. The junkyard gets a cultist up in Innsmouth, as does the church, that down in Dunwich. And this last location gets an initial shug-off, the cafe, which will be going toward the Dunwich gate. What's interesting here, and I'm kind of a little bit worried about it, is we didn't put out any shug-off moves locations. The way we'd know if a shug-off is moving is at the bottom of the card, there would be a tentacle there would be a tentacle here to indicate that the shug-off moves. I'll point that out when it finally pops up during the game, which I think we're all set to get into, so let's drop down to the reporter and get into her first turn. As usual, I'm playing with my house rule of when you give or take a clue card, you can trade anything you want as long as you're in the same city. But I don't think we're going to trade right away. The next question is, do I actually want to go drop that Shoggoth right away? And given how accessible it is right now, I think I do. So for action 1, I'm going to move the reporter down to the cafe with the Shoggoth, which will require a sanity roll. So I've got my less imposing dice tower. I'll put that in shot. And then we've got to roll a sanity die. So we've got various results on the sanity die. That's a blank, and I believe there are 2 of those on there. There's a result to lose a sanity, 2 of those. A result to lose 2 sanity, and a result to place 2 cultists on the board. So let's hope for a blank. We lose a sanity. That's not great, but we can deal with it. And then it'll cost the reporter 3 actions to defeat the Shoggoth. But she'll get a relic card out of that, she will find. The Silver Key. The active player can instantly move to any location on the board. Seems like it could be useful if we get somewhere that needs to be babysat right away. Then we'll find 2 cards off the player deck. First card up. Awarded box. No sanity roll required to play this card. Until the end of your next turn, players do not need to do sanity rolls. Place this card in front of you as a reminder. And Innsmouth. So we've got 2 Innsmouth clue cards. Then we need 2 cards from the deck to indicate where we place cultists. First up, the Historic Inn gets a cultist, and there's the symbol I was talking about to indicate if the Shoggoth moves. So the Historic Inn gets a cultist, as does the Secret Lodge. Now we're starting to put the Shoggoth moves cards into the deck. Moving over to the Doctor next, I think we're going to have him take out these 2 cultists, take out 2 of the cultists at the park. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll take out those 2 cultists. Then actually he's got 1 more action, so he can just clear the park completely out. 2 cards from the deck for the Doctor. First up, Dunwich and Arkham. I might want to consider getting the 2 of them back together so we can start concentrating some of these clue cards. But 2 cards from the deck next, we find the Pawn Shop gets a cultist, as does the Diner. Looking at the supply of cultists, I have 4, 9, 13 cultists. So we're not in dire straits about getting them back together yet, but we're probably going to do a little bit with taking out cultists this next turn, at least for the reporter. She's going to move 1 to the church, take out a cultist for action 2, 3 to the farmstead, and take out a cultist. The reason I'm taking out cultists now is because I know there's an Evil Stirs coming up. It seems like it should be coming up within the next turn or 2. 2 cards up from the player deck. First up we find an Arkham. We could probably go seal Arkham this next turn. And the Elder Sign. Pick a town. If its gate has been sealed, no new cultist or Shoggoth may be placed in that town. As a reminder, flip the seal token to show the Elder Sign. Actually, we're at hand size already, so I'm going to have to discard. Actually, we could use a couple of relics here just to get down to hand size, so I will. I'll play the Warded Bach. I'll pretend that... Actually, I think we were at hand size when we drew the first Arkham card. So I'll play the Warded Box, which means players don't need to do sanity rolls. And then we'll solve the question of the... Then for getting Arkham... Actually, Arkham would... Then the Elder Sign would give us the Silver Key, which will bring her back to the park. So we can seal Arkham this turn, assuming we don't get anything crazy happening, which we wouldn't have there. So 2 player cards from the top we find, or 2 summoning cards. The Woods gets a cultist down in Kingsport, and the hospital gets a cultist up in Innsmouth. Over to the doctor's turn. We'll go 6. And she's at 7 right now. I think for action 1, he'll take an Arkham. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just checking my hand size. Action 2, he'll take another Arkham, which will put him at hand size, so he'll have to discard. He'll discard an Innsmouth. Action 3, he'll take the 5th Arkham and discard a Dunwich. Action 4, he'll toss the 5 Arkham clue cards to immediately get the seal on Arkham, which will immediately clear these 2 cultists out. And then since the warded box is active, she's actually going to use the Elder Sign and seal Arkham away, especially since we've got... Well, we have a pretty decent split, but I'm going to go ahead and seal Arkham. Actually, am I going to seal Arkham straight away? It might be better to go try to seal... Looking at the discard, I could probably seal Dunwich or Kingsport and then use the Elder Sign there, but I think as long as the warded box is active now, I am going to put the seal on Arkham, which means nothing new can spawn there. So that was 4 actions, and his 5th will be to move to the Secret Lodge. 2 player cards from the deck. I'm still waiting for that Evil Stirs. I'm expecting it any time now. There's another Arkham, which is basically travel fodder at this point, and Kingsport. So that's our first Kingsport card. I'd be stunned if it doesn't come out on the reporter's turn, but we need 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up, the Great Hall gets a cultist, and the Shoggoth would move, except there's no Shoggoth on the board right now. And the Old Mill gets a cultist down in Dunwich, which is the Dunwich Gate location. Moving over to the reporter's next turn, where do we want to go with her? I think she's going to move 1 to University, 2 to the train station, 3 is her special action to move to the market in Kingsport, and 4 she'll take out a cultist. We'll follow the reporter over to Kingsport. Then we'll pull 2 cards from the player deck. First up, she'll find a Dunwich and Dunwich, which means the next card should be the Evil Stirs as long as I built the deck correctly. But we need 2 more cards from the top of the summoning deck. First up, we find the Boardwalk gets a cultist, as does the University. And the warded box is now no longer active, so we need to do sanity rolls once again. Over to the doctor, who's going to move 1 to the diner. 2, he's going to discard Arkham to travel anywhere he wants. He can do that since it matches the city he's in. He's going to move to the graveyard. 3, 4 to take out these 2 cultists, and 5 to the wharf. 2 player cards off the top of the deck. This first one should be the Evil Stirs in section 1 of the deck. Sure enough, we'll be moving back up top to resolve that in a second. And a Dunwich. So let's move back up top to resolve the Evil Stirs.
The 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2 / 2
First order of business for the doctor is fighting the sanity. So he's fighting the madness, so he's got to roll the sanity die. Losing a sanity, which isn't great for us. Then we'll draw... Oh, wait a minute. From the last turn, I forgot, we put the Elder Sign in Arkham, so the cultists that spawned at the university can't spawn. But we need the last card of the deck, so we find... This gets filled... I believe this gets filled with 3 cultists and a Shoggoth when we... Oh no, first we reveal the Ancient One. So our first awakening is Haster. Draw the bottom card of the Summon deck. Place a Shoggoth on that location. Discard that card to the Summoning deck, to Summoning discard pile. Then move each Shoggoth 1 location closer to the nearest open gate. So this is a Shoggoth location first, we find. The theater gets a Shoggoth. Let's see. Okay. Whoa, this is a problem. So now we're also moving the Shoggoth to the... So that was the awakening from Haster. So then we move each Shoggoth 1 location closest to the open gate. The reporter now has to make a sanity roll because the Shoggoth entered her space. She gets a blank on that at least. So that's something. Now we draw to get another Shoggoth out on the board. So this bottom card. The police station, except with the Elder Sign there, does that block Shoggoths as well? Yes, it does. Well, I believe it does. I'm just going to double check that real quick, but... Yep, so it even says on the card that no new cultist or Shoggoth may be placed there. So that's all done, which means now the cultists regroup. So now we shuffle everything. Okay, that's back on top of the deck. That can go away. And now we're still summoning 2 cultists. So first card up. Come on. The park would get a cultist, but we have the Elder Sign in Arkham. Then the market gets a cultist, which is right on top of the reporter. Which isn't great for her, but probably not too impactful. We can get that off the board, and speaking of the reporter, we're into her turn once again. The reporter's turn is going to be very simple. 3 actions to defeat the Shoggoth, because I know I put a lot of Shoggoth moves cards in the back in the deck. And then the relic she gets from that. Alien Carving. The active player can take 3 extra actions this turn. Which... What would I do with 3 more actions? So that would bring me up to 5 actions. I could move over to the report, over to the doctor, take the 2 Dunwich cards, which would be 2, 3, back to the market, and then move to the historic inn, and I'm all ready to seal Dunwich next turn. Yeah, that could work. So we'll play the Alien Carving. Of course, the reporter's got to fight the madness. She's got to roll the sanity die on that. Put the dice tower right here. We'll make a little bit of room for it. Placing 2 more cultists. That kind of blew up in my face a little bit. So we place a 3rd cultist, and then the 4th one actually triggers another awakening. So our next Ancient One is Dagon. Place a cultist on each gate location, open or closed. So we'll place 1 on the old mill, 1 on the graveyard, 1 on the hospital, but not 1 on the park in Arkham because of the Elder Sign there. Okay, so with extra actions, I think that kind of changes my plan a little bit. Because we just put the market in the discard pile, so there's no location in danger of going through another awakening, of triggering another awakening. But I don't think we're going to take any chances on this one. So we have 3 more actions this turn. I think we're going to go... I think we're going to defeat these 3 cultists to keep the cultist supply nice and high. Then I'm going to move to... let's sit tight, actually. I can get the... Let's go over to the woods and we'll defeat the cultist there. I'll sit tight because I know I'm going to be drawing... Because I'm drawing 2 cards, which will put me at hand size. First card up. Never mind, it's another Evil Stirs. We'll have to move up top to resolve that. And a Kingsport. So let's move back up top to resolve the Evil Stirs once again. Two straight turns of Evil Stirs is not very welcome, but when it gets buried that deep, when the first one gets buried that deep, having it happen is a distinct possibility. So, let's have the reporter fight the madness once again. Losing 2 sanity, that's not great. Then we'll reveal the next ancient one. So the next ancient one we pull out. Shubni Gudath. Draw 4 cards from the bottom of the summoning deck and add 1 cultist to each of those locations. Discard those cards to the summoning discard pile. So we're pulling 4 cards out. 2, 3, 4. First up we find the train station, except we still have the Elder sign there, so we can't place anything in Arkham. Next up, the swamp, which does get a cultist. Then the docks gets a cultist. And finally, the wharf gets a cultist, which is right on top of the reporter. Then we draw another card from the bottom of the deck and place a Shuggoth there. So the card this time, the factory gets a Shuggoth, which is right by the hospital, which is right by the Innsmouth gate, so that could be problematic. How many Shuggoth moves cards are we putting back on top? We're putting 2 back on top, so we have to hope we don't draw both of them when we go to summon cultists. Because we're also a ways away from being able to defeat, well, we could defeat it this turn if we have to, and we might. That's assuming we don't draw both Shuggoth moves cards as we are about to summon cultists. Oop. Back on top, Phoenix. You've gotten in trouble with that before. First card up from the summoning deck. The park gets a cultist, except it doesn't because Arkham's permanently sealed. And the wharf gets a cultist, which it can. So that actually works out well for us. But we're down to the Doctor next. Let's move down to Kingsport. The Doctor will have exactly enough actions to do this. Action 1, he'll move over to the wharf. Action 2, he'll discard the Kingsport to move up. The factory is a bus location, fortunately for us. So he'll move up there. But he's got to fight the madness. He's got to roll a sanity die for moving into the same space as the Shuggoth. Losing 2 sanity, that's not, well, that's probably fine. 3, 4, 5, though, he'll defeat the Shuggoth. And then he'll get a relic from that. He will get Bizarre Statue. To skip the next summoning step, don't flip over summoning cards. He's also going to use the Song of Kadath at the end of his turn, We can choose to either have all players regain 1 or 1 player regains full. I think... I think all players are going to regain 1. Because if we have 1 player... Because if we have Should a Mel come out as our next ancient one, then we're just going to get screwed on that. So I think each player is going to regain 1 sanity. We'll get that out of the way, and then we need 2 player cards. So this is what the doctor, or the doctor's drawing this turn. First up, he finds Last Hourglass. The active player may take any clue card from the player discard pile. That could be useful. And Arkham, which we don't really need Arkham clue cards right now. What we need but don't particularly want is 2 more cards from the summoning deck. First up we find the Dox gets a Cultist, and the Shoggoth would have moved if we didn't take it out. And the Market gets a Cultist. Right, the Reporter, I think we need to start going Cultist hunting because the supply is getting a little bit thin of Cultists. She'll work her way over to Dunwich. We'll move the camera just slightly. Action 1, she'll move down to the Great Hall. Action 2, she'll wipe out a Cultist. Action 3, over to the Swamp. Action 4, she'll wipe out another Cultist. 2 more cards from the player deck we'll find an Innsmouth. And this one will put her up to hand size, so she'll have to discard down. An Arkham, which looks like perfect discard fodder to me. 2 cards from the top of the summon deck we find the Swamp gets a Cultist right on top of the Reporter, and the Train Station, except the Elder Sign is on Arkham, so we don't get Cultists there. Whoops. I discarded both of those to the wrong discard pile. Let's move those to the summon discard pile where they belong, Phoenix. Anywho, moving over to the Doctor's turn. He's at the factory. Do we give up a Dunwich Seal to try to start clearing some of these Cultists out? I think I don't like it, but I think we do. So he's going to discard a Dunwich to move to any location in Dunwich. He'll move to the Old Mill for action 1. 2-3, he'll take out 2 Cultists. 4 to the church, 5 to the farmstead. Hopefully, with getting them together, we can get Dunwich into one of their hands. First action up, or first card up for the Doctor, is another Dunwich, so we make up for the one that we used to move down to Dunwich. And Kingsport. Then 2 cards from the summoning deck. We're starting to get the supply of Cultists built back up. First up, the factory gets a Cultist, as does the University, except it doesn't because of the Elder Sign there. The Reporter is going to move, let's see, he's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're both at hand size, we're both near hand size. Let's move the Reporter, let's have the Reporter action 1 take out a Cultist. Action 2 to the farmstead. Action 3, she'll give him a Dunwich card. Action 4, she'll give him another Dunwich card and toss a Kingsport. Actually, he's got to toss something. He'll toss the Arkham. He'll toss the Arkham clue card. Then 2 player cards for the Reporter. First up she'll find another Innsmouth, which is actually very good for us. And And Innsmouth. Huh. Okay, that's mildly interesting. Actually, that's a lot more than mildly interesting. It probably means we can seal Innsmouth on the reporter's next turn, barring anything crazy. 2 cards from the summoning deck. The theater gets a cultist, as does the Secret Lodge, except there's the Elder Sign and Arkham. As for the reporter, or the doctor's turn, action 1, he's going to take Dunwich from the reporter and discard Kingsport. Action 2 to the church, action 3 to the old mill. Action 4, he'll spend the 5 Dunwich clue cards to seal the gate at Dunwich, which will then take a cultist off of each location in Dunwich. And action 5, he'll move to the church. 2 player cards for the doctor. First up, once it decides to focus, we have another Dunwich, which I think is travel fodder at this point, and Kingsport. We do need to start collecting Kingsport. We've got the 5 Innsmouth cards that we need to seal Innsmouth right now, which is a mess, to put it mildly. 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up, we find the hospital gets a cultist, which brings that up to 3, as does the boardwalk. Innsmouth is about to become a lot less of a problem, though, because we're on the reporter's turn. Actually, could she go 1? No, she couldn't. She wouldn't be able to seal the gate at Innsmouth if she stops and trades with the doctor first. And even the doctor's telling her, just go get that seal. I'll come get Innsmouth. I'll come get Kingsport. We'll go to Kingsport together and figure things out there. So action 1, the reporter's going to move to the historic inn. I think we have our destination in shot. Yes, we do. Action 2, she'll move up to the factory. Remember, as an action, she can move bus to bus. Action 3, she'll move to the hospital. And action 4, she'll discard the 5 Innsmouth clue cards to seal the Innsmouth gate, which will take a cultist off of every Innsmouth location, which will get us rid of 6 cultists in Innsmouth. Very welcome. Then 2 player cards for the reporter we'll find Innsmouth and Arkham, neither of which we really care about right now. 2 player cards from the deck we'll find, or from the summon deck. The Great Hall gets a cultist, as does the pawn shop. Good thing we took a bunch of cultists off Innsmouth. Then for the doctor's turn, he's going to move action 1 to the historic inn. Action 2, he'll toss Dunwich to move to any location that he wants. He's going to move to the wharf. 3, 4, he'll take out 2 cultists there. 5, he'll go to the market and wait for the reporter to arrive. 2 cards from the player deck we'll find an Innsmouth and Arkham. Once again, cities we don't care about. And then we need 2 cards from the summoning deck. First up, we'll find the Woods gets a cultist, as does the Junkyard. I'm just going to double check, but I'm pretty sure when you seal a gate... Yep, okay. We've got that straight. Now we're over to the reporter's turn. I think actions 1 and 2 shall take 2 cultists off the hospital, 3 to the factory, 4 bust to move to the market. 2 cards from the player deck. First up, we'll find an Innsmouth. Where are the Kingsport cards? And an Evil Stirs. Delightful. Let's move back up top to resolve the Evil Stirs. Roll of the Sanity die coming up as we're fighting the madness. That's a blank, so that's very welcome. Actually, we can bring that completely out of shot. Our next ancient one is Azathoth. Remove 3 cultists from the unused supply, which isn't that bad right now because we've been really trying to keep the cultists under control here. Then we get a new Shoggoth, which will be the bottom card of the summoning deck, so we'll find the graveyard gets a oh, that's bad. The graveyard gets a Shoggoth because if the Shoggoth moves, it'll be off the board and we'll be going through another awakening. Then the cultists regroup. Alright, that's back on top of the deck. Now we're drawing 3 cards from the summoning deck, so first up we'll find the Theater gets a cultist. Unfortunately, we can't kill that Shoggoth next turn, most likely. Unless the Doctor goes and does it like right now. Second card up. Never mind. Swamp gets a cultist. And the Shoggoth's off the board, so we're going through another awakening. Which means our next awakening is Sithagua. All players collectively discard 2, 3, or 4 cards with 2, 3, or 4 players. That's not that bad because we've got these useless Arkham clue cards that we can discard. And then our third summoning card is the Secret Lodge. Except once again, the Elder Sign is in Arkham. So that'll bring us back down to the Doctor's turn, so let's zoom in on Kingsport. I think the plan right now is going to be to just babysit Kingsport until we get the last 3 clue cards we need for Kingsport. So for the Doctor's turn, action 1, he's going to wipe out the cultists at the market. 2 to the theater. 3, 4, wipe out 2 more cultists. 5 back to the market. This way, whoever starts drawing our Kingsport clue cards, we can concentrate them there. So our first clue card up is an Arkham, which is not particularly welcome here, and an Innsmouth. We probably are going to have to risk the bizarre statue here. I do not think we've been using that many Kingsports. 1, 2, no, there's only 2 in the discard pile. So they probably all ended up at the bottom of the deck. But we need 3 cards from the summoning deck now. First card up. The Boardwalk gets a cultist. Then the Great Hall gets a cultist. And the train station would get a cultist, but once again, the Elder Sign's there. So no cultist placed there. For the reporter's turn, she's going to move 1 to the Great Hall, 2, 3 to defeat these 2 cultists, and 4 back to the market. 2 player cards for the reporter. First up we find a Dunwich, and there's a Kingsport. Now we're getting somewhere. 3 cards from the top of the deck. First up we find First up we find a dry throat, apparently. Let me take a quick drink. Much better. First up we find the hospital gets a cultist. Next up, the wharf gets a cultist, as does the factory. Okay, so moving over to the doctor's turn, I think we are going to gamble on the last hourglass. So the first thing we need to do is roll the sanity die for that, just to make sure we don't go completely insane. Which we have nothing happen, so that's brilliant. So he's going to grab one of those Kingsport clue cards out of the discard pile. The question now is... who do we give them to? Who do we concentrate Kingsport on? And then do we just have the person sit tight for the last Kingsport card? I think the answer to that is... Let's see, he's at 6, she's at 5. I think I'm going to give the reporter... I think we're going to use actions 1 and 2 to move Kingsport over to the reporter. 3 will move Innsmouth over. 4, he's going to take another Innsmouth. And 5, he's going to take Dunwich because why not? We could use some discard fodder. 2 player cards up from the deck we find our last Kingsport, which requires us to discard. We'll discard a Dunwich, so we will win the game this next turn, assuming we don't have everything go completely haywire here. And another Kingsport. Now we're starting to find the Kingsport. So we will discard an Arkham to hand size. 3 cards from the top of the summoning deck. First up we'll find the Park gets a cultist, except no it doesn't because of the Elder Sign. Second up, the Docks gets a cultist, the Shoggoth would move except it already left the board. And the Junkyard gets a cultist. You know, it's funny before we move into the reporter's turn, just this musing. I very early in the game, I very initially wrote off that Elder Sign that I put on Arkham while we had the warded statue in play, but that Elder Sign has been doing serious work for us this game. Speaking of which, let's go win the game now. So for the reporter's first turn, she'll take Kingsport from the Doctor, 2 to the Wharf, 3 to the Graveyard, 4 to discard the 5 Kingsport cards, to get our last seal on Kingsport, removing those cultists for formality's sake, but we have won this game of Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. So let's move back up top to wrap this video up. That was quite the nail biter, but we managed to seal off the 4 major cities of the Cthulhu Mythos from the Ancient Ones. Just out of curiosity, I'm curious who our last Ancient One was going to be. Our last Ancient One would have been Yig, so we would have needed a clue card from a connected town, which we had plenty of, so it would have delayed us probably by another 2 turns. I would have also had to move an Innsmouth over to the reporter, but Yig did not wake up, so they'll stay flipped down. But that will do it for this playthrough of Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. We're probably going to be playing something else this afternoon. I don't know what yet. But there won't be any videos from Saturday until Tuesday afternoon. I'll be going away to visit my family for Christmas, but I'll shoot a smaller video about that later and what games I'm planning on taking with me on vacation. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, Take care, everyone.